Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I have Sacia Matthews here with me, who is an incredible photographer. She's a destination wedding and boudoir photographer and educator based in Charleston, South Carolina. She believes strongly that working closely with equally aligned and inclusive creative teams that mirror intentionality and legacy is key to an unforgettable client experience. With a BA in English and a former high school English teacher, Sacia equally draws inspiration from classic works of literature and a strong love of dimensional storytelling. She is passionate about using her teaching skills to help creatives create and signal inclusion within their businesses and effortlessly merge their personal brand with their work to create a successful value-based business. When she's not photographing or educating, she's traveling with her husband to the next island on their bucket list and finding the next brunch spot in Charleston. I'm so thrilled, Sacia, that you're here with me today. Thank you so much. And that we get to hear from your experiences in this industry. To bring you all into why Sacia and I are here together this morning or afternoon for Sacia.
Yeah.
Is because we are going to have a conversation about equity and inclusion within the wedding industry. Something that sparked it for myself was something that happened back on Instagram in June, along with the hashtag Share the Mic Now, where a bunch of amazing Black women took over Instagram accounts of white women, mostly famous people, where they were sharing essentially ways to magnify the voices of Black women who are creating a culture of change in their communities. And we need that in our industry too. Just because we're not famous doesn't mean that racial inequality doesn't exist. So I'm so grateful that Sacia was willing to hop on and have this conversation with me. And honestly, I think she's amazing as a photographer, as a human being. I geek out over her work. And we're even going to dive in with Sacia into Lightroom and some of the stuff that happens as far as how this conversation goes all the way deep dive into the way we edit as photographers. So we are here for it. And so glad you guys are here with us. Thanks so much, Sacia. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. You make me sound so much cooler than I actually am when you read. So I'm I wish that you could be my cheerleader every day.
I will be. I'll just message you on Instagram every morning.
Love it. It's done. I'm so excited to have this talk with you. I was so honored that you thought to reach out to me. When I got your email, I was so excited. And yeah, I'm just excited to talk. And I'm so sorry. My dog is in here being crazy. He's usually asleep all the time and I don't know what's going on. So I might have to let him out in a minute, but yeah, everything is good. 2020.
Let's just dive right in. Would you be willing to share with us just how you would describe the current state of the wedding industry as it relates to equity and inclusion?
Yeah. So I actually gained a little traction on my Instagram when I started speaking up about this. It's something that I've spoke on for several years now, and then it kind of caught flame finally over the summer. First of all, the wedding industry to me is the best industry to work in. It's hard work. It's very taxing. I'm pretty sure every wedding vendor is going to have arthritis when we're older because we put our bodies through craziness, but it is so worth it. You're working with people on what should be anyways, the happiest day of their lives. And you are making dreams come true. And there's no better feeling. Clients are awesome, all the good things. But when you dig a little bit, you'll find that there's still some gaps in places where there shouldn't be. So yeah, there is an issue with equity in the wedding industry. There's an issue. And when I say that, I mean, in terms of Black vendors, not only having the same opportunities, but being able to work their way up and elevate in the same ways as white vendors. there's gaps, and not even just Black people, like BIPOC, I say. I don't know if you're supposed to spell out every term, but I say BIPOC. Everybody that's in this like subgroup has issues with finding ways to be like almost legitimized, like almost feeling like you've got the credit to back it up that like you're a great wedding vendor. There's some gaps there. So, and then when you even think about things as simple as like publications and magazines and Pinterest and all these places where we source wedding inspiration, is not always reflective of the world that we live in. You'll struggle to find, images and work that is representative and speaks to the diverse client. And that's a huge issue, at least to me, and I know to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a friend of mine told me recently she was scrolling and she counted on Instagram like how many not Instagram, Pinterest, how many images it took to find when she just typed in bride to find a bride who was Black. And it was like hundreds of images before you could find inspiration. And that has a lot to do with publication and what goes viral on social media and all sorts of things, let alone, like what you were saying, the careers and trajectory that Black vendors specifically and BIPOC. I don't know if you're supposed to abbreviate like BIPOC, like what do we say? So I'm glad that you said that, but so totally agree. And it's really tough.
It is.
And something that we have to recognize and be aware of. I know that back in June, you shared on your Instagram just some of the ways that this is encountered for you on a wedding day. And that was really moving to me. And you don't have to share any of this if you don't want, but I remember just realizing, like, as you were sharing your story of what it's like on a wedding day for you sometimes, like I would just recognize my privilege in a whole new way as a white person. So I don't know if you want to say anything on that, but.
Yeah, totally. I shared a couple of instances. I always say it's hard enough being like a woman on a wedding days because men automatically some men can treat the female vendors like, okay, like you don't really know what you're doing, or like they're in charge, or whatever the case may be. So you already have that battle. And then when you bring race into it, it's like a whole new animal. Like, I shared about how my second shooter, if my husband's not second shooting with me, we typically will, we have a couple of people that we use, and they're both white, and they will constantly, approach them on wedding days, them being the planner, the DJ, like whoever. They'll go talk to my second shooter, even though my second shooter has told them over and over again at this point, like, I'm not in charge. She is in charge. Like, I'm just helping, or whatever the case may be. That happens just about at every wedding. It at least has to be said at least once or twice. Like, I'm never assumed to just be the photographer. And even when my husband is there, like, they'll still go to him first. So then that's like a gender thing. But then even when I have somebody else with me, it turns into that. I've had times where, a venue has told my husband and I to use our hands to eat our vendor meal, but then they'll get silverware for other vendors that are there. Yep, we've had that. We've been told before that, like, there weren't any chairs available for us to sit in. We can go sit in a hallway, and then come to find out later that there was a room where vendors could all eat. And so things like that do eat away at your spirit. But, I've realized that I just have had to work double as hard as some of my white peers in order to gain and maintain a level of respect in the industry, so that people know now not to treat me like that. But the problem with that is that it should never happen. Like, you should never treat a vendor like that, or a person like that anywhere, anytime. But then when you're doing it at, like, these places are places of employment. It's like, total discrimination. And that's not to say it's all the time. It happens way less than it obviously at least happens way less than not. But those moments have existed and do exist. And we do walk into a wedding day completely different and thinking different things and knowing we have to dress a certain way, wear our hair a certain way, we have to talk a certain way, we can't say certain things around each other or whatever. So that we're not interpreted as like different or like this kind of person or whatever. And it just should never have to be like that. So we have definitely had those experiences, and many other Black vendors have had these experiences. So in a way, it was kind of nice to share because we had so many other vendors reach out to us and was like, this has happened to me too. I feel like this too. And then it just confirmed all the things that we were already feeling. And so yeah, that was tough to like come out and share publicly. I even had some vendors like question or like try to make it into like this political thing. And I'm like, that's not what this is about. Like, I'm just sharing to you at a base level what we've called unseen biases are. There's my dog being weird again in the background. Sorry. But, there are these unseen biases that like you may not realize that you're doing it or you're treating people like this, but it's happening.
Oh, absolutely. It's so heartbreaking to me to hear those things. And if I'm transparent with you, like there is a desire to like want to ignore it because it's painful to talk about and think about. And that's where you're coming against all of that resistance. But honestly, it's not political. It's our responsibility to talk about these things so that there can be real change and that we can bring it out in the open so people like actually have to admit that this is happening. As if your job as a wedding photographer is not hard enough. My goodness, I can't even imagine walking in and having this other completely separate list of responsibilities and thoughts that I would have to think about that you must go into every day. Because for me, like it's a huge burden to like go in and be like, okay, I'm going to keep everybody on time. I'm going to make sure I remind the bridesmaids to get dressed. I'm going to, you're doing all of these things in your head on top of all of this.
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine.
And like, it's funny you even say that. I remember one time we worked a wedding and we had this bridal party. Bride and groom were like amazing people, but somebody in their wedding party goes, they were trying to transport like bouquets or something. And one of the bridesmaids goes, oh, just let the help take that base or whatever. And it's like, who are you referring to? Like my second shooter actually asked, she's like, who were you talking to? And she pointed at me. She called me the help. And of course, like you can't make it about you on the wedding day. So you can't like, it's not like I'm going to get into a confrontation with this person. I'm just going to remain professional. But those things hurt,
Oh my gosh. It's so broken.
It's bizarre.
Is awful. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah, it's all good. Like we've learned now at this point, like we have tough skin, we're rolling with it. And as long as these conversations keep happening, we're hopeful that things will change and that we are shifting mindsets on stuff like this. So it's worth at least having the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it takes so much strength to say that and to have that silver lining that you feel there. So I appreciate that a ton. Going to another question. So you described some of what you and your husband and other Black vendors have experienced in this industry. Do you think that this happens also for clients and for Black couples especially? Are they experiencing inequities when they're looking for vendors and things like this?
Oh my gosh, maybe even more so. So like my husband and I got married in 2018, so not that long ago. And that alone was such a stressful process because one, we had trouble identifying vendors that fit the aesthetic that we loved and like had every component that we knew that we wanted in our wedding, but didn't signal to us in any kind of way that they would be okay with working with us or being around our families. Like that's a huge thing that I don't even think sometimes clients think about like, will your families be okay? Will your friends be okay around these people? These are things that you need to know so that nobody ever feels, you know, ostracized, for lack of better words. I can't talk. But we experienced it through wedding planning, like picking vendors for sure was a task. Like the uncertainty of not knowing and having to go through and ask questions, that was frustrating. Seeing bridal inspiration and things like that, and not seeing women that looked like me that had same values as me, like that was a big thing. Like I'm not a size, you know, two bridal and I'm not white. I don't have long blonde hair. You know, I don't identify with this. It was hard.
Mhm.
And it made my husband and I know that we wanted our clients to feel different. We wanted them to know as soon as they knocked on our door, which our door is our website, um, we wanted them to know that they were welcome, whatever they brought with them, whoever was in their wedding or going to attend, we wanted them to feel comfortable. So yeah, clients can definitely sense it.
Oh, 100%. I loved what you said about um, making sure that as you're hiring vendors, that not only do they feel safe and comfortable to you, the client, but to your families as well. Because I I know that, I mean, I've heard so many horror stories of just like offhanded comments that people make, like
Mhm.
you were saying, even the bridesmaid that essentially called you a maid,
Yeah.
or a slave, which
Yeah.
is, we won't even get into how
Yeah.
insane that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to put your family in that position of feeling pain and discomfort on what's
Yep.
supposed to be this incredibly celebratory day. Um,
Exactly.
I can only imagine trying to like read between the lines and
That's what it is.
like decipher, like based on like social media posts and like
Yep.
how people speak about their work and things
Yep.
of this nature, um, and really having to guess
Yeah.
essentially on whether a vendor is safe to work with.
Yeah, you're taking a risk. You know, the best thing that we did was we found our planner and she was amazing. I knew she signaled very early from the minute you get on her website, like she wanted to celebrate diverse love. And like she knows that there's not one set picture of what that looks like. She had the work to back it up, she had the copywriting to back it up. And when I got on the phone, everything lined up, and fortunately she was able to kind of point me in the right direction for the remaining things that we needed at that point. Otherwise I think we would have just been walking in blind.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're talking about that, those signals that vendors make, what do you think what do you think white vendors are getting wrong about Black Lives Matter and inclusion, as far as like how they market and even just how they present in the world?
So there's two aspects to it. One is some white vendors still think that it's like a political thing. And so their crutch is that I don't talk about politics in my business.
It's off brand.
Exactly. It's off brand. Um, that like yeah, like I feel like when you're dealing with human rights, it's not really political. It's more like an ethical thing. And I think you would want to signal to all people that you support them. And that starts with the small changes. You know, I think about all the vendors that stayed quiet or they came out with posts and they're like, I just don't know what to say, you know? And
Mhm.
how easy is that? You know, like, I don't know what to say. So I'm just not going to say anything, but here's a pretty picture. Enjoy the rest of your day. Like, no, that was not what was needed. I even put up a post, I think, during that time. And I'm like, if you don't know what to say, here's what you say. I love you. I want to support you. Your life matters and you're always welcomed in this business. It's literally as simple
Mhm.
as that,
Mhm.
you know? And I think the issue that has come in is that it's the word Black. Like that word has
Mhm.
been politicized, stigmatized, and now it's like this dirty word if you don't want to use it in your business. And that's a whole other can of worms right there.
Mhm.
Um, to me, that's been the saddest part about it, even with like, people that you admire their work, their portfolio, their street cred, for lack of better words, and then for them to not even be able to simply say that was
Yeah.
like really disheartening um, for me. But that part, getting it politicized, and also just, they, it's like they want to tokenize now. Sometimes some people are wanting to tokenize and like try to capitalize on the movement
Mhm.
just to benefit their business, not necessarily to be a factor that ends systemic racism. And that's disheartening. Like you shouldn't be throwing style shoots right now just so you can get Black content. You shouldn't be, you know, begging, or not even begging, just like approaching Black people with the motive of, well, I need this Black work.
Mhm.
That's not to say that you shouldn't be choosing diverse models. Like that's another bag, and we can talk about that. But it's more like you need to do the work internally first. You need to do the work to make sure your business is inclusive, like
Mhm.
through your ethics, through your copywriting, through what you're sharing, through your support, through where you shop, who you donate to, like voting, like all this stuff matters. And then I feel like the universe will send you what you need.
Yeah.
But a lot of people aren't doing the hard work. They aren't taking the hard stances. And so it comes across as tokenizing. And so those two things have kind of been rubbing me the wrong way.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like you're being generous by saying it comes off as tokenizing. Like
Yeah.
that is what it is. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I saw, like, if you just audit an Instagram and you scroll back from like pre-June, and then you see what June through the last few months have looked like. Not only, yeah, throwing together content as quickly as they can, but even like using actual Black couples that they have photographed as like a proof statement of like,
Yep.
see, I'm one of the good ones, which
Yep.
I think for white people, like, is we're trying to prove that we're a good one, like
Yeah.
I like, but before, like you said, before we do any of that internal work. So we're like, we care more about what you think of me
Exactly.
than what actually who I am and what's going on in my heart.
Yep.
And like you're saying, in your business and the way that you run your company.
Yeah.
And that's so dangerous.
Mhm.
To only be concerned about how you're perceived in the world, um, and so that you can stay in business,
Yeah.
which like is obviously self-serving, not
Oh,
moving
very much.
in any way. So absolutely, like if you're like, if any like white vendor who's watching this right now like is feeling like a little convicted,
Hmm.
because I know that like, well, first of all, know that I've been there. Like
Yeah.
I have gotten it wrong myself,
Of course.
and 100% like can say with vulnerability that like I will get it wrong again.
Of course.
And because it's not like I've learned this. This is crazy, but I had to learn this. But it's not racist or not racist. At
Yep.
the end of the day, it's not like I am or I am not. I
Exactly.
have prejudices and racist behaviors that I have to identify by doing the work,
Yep.
and then like actually change
Yep.
as a person.
Yeah.
And that is like one day at a time kind of work. And it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it has to be done. And I hope that it's encouraging to people to hear that like it's not as like an on-off switch, but that like you, and it's not like, okay, I have time, like I'll get to it. No,
Yeah. No,
no,
you have to do
you
it
have
now.
to work today.
Yep. No, you're
Absolutely.
so right. Like it's, yeah, and it's ongoing, right? Like it never stops. You don't all of a sudden have this change of heart and then it's like, okay, cool, like I'm done. Like, no, it's an ongoing process because, like you said, you're going to get it wrong again. We all are. Like,
Mm-hmm.
things are going to progress and change. And as we have more conversations, like that's going to bring about more change and that stuff doesn't stop. So you have to stay engaged with all of this, which is kind of why I'm happy we're having this conversation now. It's like things have died down. We're not talking about it as much anymore. Like these conversations still need to be occurring.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't like let that flame die,
Yep.
because this isn't like a 2020 incident. This isn't
Yep.
like something that happened this year. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of people sometimes look at it that way.
Yep.
But at least white people, obviously not. People can't possibly see it.
Yeah, it's our whole life.
And yeah, absolutely. So keeping it going is so important. Another question I have is how do you see unconscious bias show up specifically in our industry?
Yeah. I think it there's so many levels. It can be as simple as, the one example I gave of assuming that I'm not the lead photographer, you
Mhm.
automatically thinking that the white person with the camera is the lead photographer. It can be as simple as that. It can be as complex as a black vendor walking in the room and you automatically having these like judgments about them. A lot of times, I've heard white vendors say that, oh well, like I just would think that they would be unprofessional. I'm like, you've never even had a conversation with them. How could you just assume that someone's unprofessional? Like I never assume that any vendor is unprofessional. I've never done that. Like I look at their work, I look at what their clients say, I look at my experiences with them, and then I form that judgment. I've not one time looked at a vendor and thought, yeah, they're unprofessional. Like, it just doesn't work like that. But Black people are often not given that same benefit of the doubt. Um, so there's so many layers. And even for clients, the one that gets me a lot is they automatically assume they're low budget or like they don't have the budget for it.
Whoa.
My highest paying client so far was a Black couple. They had an amazing, incredible wedding, and they were displeased with their experience with their planning team because their planners were constantly trying to overtalk them or not give them the space to feel like they could incorporate their ideas and whatnot because they have this frame of reference of what a wedding should be. And it can only look like this. And if you incorporate too much of this, then that takes away from it. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's not about you, it's about the client and what they want. And there are BIPOC clients at every price point who will more like gladly give you their money if you make them feel a valued partner in this wedding planning process. So, yeah, there's a lot.
Absolutely. I think that's so well said. And that I think unconscious bias also often shows up as assumption.
Yep.
And and that goes back to this country's history. It goes back so many years. So it's gonna take work to like catch yourself. Like all that it really, one of the big things that I think we can do is just be aware.
Yep.
Like pay attention to what's going on in your head because that's going to seep out your pores in the way that your business is run.
And it's like, ask yourself, like, why did that thought pop in my head? And I bet you every time you'll be able to check yourself. But the problem is that we just zoom past it. We stick with that assumption until they prove it later that it's different. And it's like, no, like from day one, you should give everybody the benefit of the doubt like you do everybody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess this is a huge question. So this is like not on you to obviously about this, but what do you think is required for change to happen in the wedding industry?
Yeah, that's a big one. But I'll say this. Here's been my answer to that question. It starts with equity, and that is something that we all can do. That means, like, I'll try to bring it back disciplines, maybe like planners. One of the things that I thought that was super cool. Well, first of all vendors want to be hired based on merit, not color. So in no way am I saying that anybody should go out and just hire the first Black person that they see. Like, no, you still need to hire based on merit, based on performance, based on their work, their accolades, like whatever, personality, all the things that you should do anyways, but that haven't been happening. But one of the things that I thought that was really cool was that Easton Events posted during that time that one of the things that they were going to take seriously in their business and like repledge is that they were going to really focus in on finding like an equally aligned Black vendors that they can start adding to their proposals and like their vendor lists when they deal directly with clients. Um, Stuff like that is big because like when you have a planning team that's like as respected as Easton Events, and they are making the effort to make sure that what they are presenting to clients has a diverse group of people. It's not just all white women, like it's a mixture of like talented people. That's a really big deal because now these vendors are going to get exposure to clients that otherwise they wouldn't have. Because we all know that, like, when you're working with planners, especially, like, they are the people that really hire the vendor team. So, them being active and engaged in that is really important. Um, so I was actually really impressed by that. I think that things like that create equity, in hiring second shooters. Like if there's a talented Black artist that's, in your area, like just reach out to them, go to coffee, see if your personalities mesh. I think a lot of times we think that like we're so different and we're not. Like I get along with almost anybody, or like I can find something in common with just about anybody.
Mhm.
Like it's the same thing both ways. Like I've been shocked by the amount of like white people who have even said to me, like, I thought that you were intimidating. And I'm always like, why? Like because of my skin? Like it's not like I'm not gonna bite your head off. And that goes back to like an unconscious bias. You automatically assume that I was intimidating. Why? So but yeah, it's definitely equity.
It's Sacia, it's those adorable Charleston pictures in the classic cars. They're so intimidating.
I know. I'm like, I like horses and old cars. Like, I don't like
adorable, sweet, like aesthetic.
Seriously, I'm like, okay, cool. I like pink buildings. Like, that's pretty much it. But yeah, like just bringing people and elevating them where you can, elevating their voices where you can, introducing, Black vendors into your market and meshing them and seeing where you can collaborate and seeing where there's goodness. Like I would love to refer people to these other artists that I love, but I can't do that if I don't know if they'll actually feel safe with you. So like engaging with your local community is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. There were so many good, like easy to implement
Yeah.
ideas that you just gave us, honestly. And I love it. I think there's tons of things we can do to really increase equity in this industry.
Yeah.
And even I was just thinking, something I heard that was really, really like caught me off guard, but in a good way recently was like we were saying, a lot of people have been putting together like styled shoots with models, but like, why are you stopping there? Like,
Right.
because that's the performative piece,
Yep.
essentially. And why instead didn't you reach out to your community and test out working with Black vendors that you haven't had the opportunity to work with yet that
Yep.
you think may be like perfect vendor partners aesthetically and like everything that they fit in with your brand and your business, like reach across the aisle and collaborate with other vendors that aren't on your list that you know are very likely a good fit for your couples.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like those are the actions that create real change. Like you posting a pretty picture of a Black model or a Black couple during this does nothing, solves nothing, doesn't make you better, doesn't make the world better. So, essentially you're right. It's performative.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so because you're such a talented photographer and most of both of our audiences, we have got a lot of photographers listening in.
Yeah.
I want to get like a little nitty gritty and like kind of take this conversation and focus it really tighter on photography.
Hey friends, quick pause. Sacia is going to dive in real deep for all of us photographers, and she and I decided that this conversation just needed to be split up into 2 videos because it's just that in depth, it's that great. And so stay tuned. The photographer deep dive on this conversation is coming next Friday.